Barry Kent MacKay. Good morning, sir. Please go ahead.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, my name is Barry Kent MacKay, Senior Program Advisor and Canadian Representative. Thank you for Born Free, an international animal protection and conservation organization. My particular area of expertise is birds, and I am an ornithological artist. Most people understandably have no idea how many different species of wildlife exist in the world, and most are only able to name a tiny fraction of 1% of bird or mammal or reptile, amphibian or fish species. And that fact helps explains why I also strongly urge you to have the city staff more thoroughly examine the benefits of a positive or permitted list approach to regulating exotic animals instead of a prohibited list of species that cannot be kept. A positive list is much easier, more efficient, and will require less city resources, fewer resources to maintain than a prohibited list will. And I will now try to explain why I believe that to be true. Of the nearly 10,000 known bird species, only penguins, 17 species, gruiforms, 182 species, and flamingos, 5 species, are now being recommended to be added to the prohibited list. While not opposing those prohibitions, or the few that already exist, it should be noted that all of the world's other bird species are allowed in Toronto if they're not otherwise prohibited, for example, by federal legislation, such as CITES. But what about the 4 species of loon, the 22 species of grebe, both groups of birds that require relatively deep water and live fish to survive and can't live on a dry surface without incurring incurable foot damage, or such highly specialized aquatic and oceanic birds as tropic birds or pelicans, gannets, anhingas, frigate birds, herons, storks, shoebills, ibis, it goes on and on. What about species whose diets are unknown, or species like swifts or nightjars that survive on flying insects, or trogons, which tend to die in captivity? Or there's three species of aptly named Patoi, that's a real name, whose plumage is toxic to humans, or species whose dietary needs or conservation status are unknown. They are all allowed in Toronto. It's not that these species are commonly kept, although there are a substantial number of bird species in the pet trade, but rather that as crazes and fads for things like hedgehogs or sugar gliders and so on have shown, a previously little-known animal can become extremely popular very quickly. Certainly, once an animal has been domesticated and it's demonstrated that the needs of that species are known and can be met, that they pose no human health risks or environmental threats, and jurisdiction can take care of them if necessary and rehome them, then obviously that animal should be a candidate for the positive list. But first, I believe that determination should be made, and I think it would be an onerous, perhaps impossible task for the City of Toronto staff to do that. For example, currently all rabbits are allowed in Toronto except for hares and pikas, but is a snowshoe rabbit allowed? It's also known as a varying hare. Do we expect an enforcement officer to be able to identify all 29 species of pika as being pikas and be able to tell which of the 63 species of the family Leporidae, which encompasses all the species of rabbits and hares, are in fact rabbits and which are hares? I couldn't even do that. The vast majority of the 1,500 species of rodent are small enough not to be prohibited in Toronto if they come from self-sustaining captive populations. But can an enforcement officer know if a spiny pocket mouse or an animalir or a gundi or a kayanuya or a noki or a tuckle is a captive bred and allowed species? Why are palm civets allowed but not civets? And what is the difference? And what of meerkats? Does an enforcement officer know which family they're in, allowed or not? In fact, they are herpestids and are allowed in Toronto right now. City staff should not be expected to know that, nor do I suspect the intent was to allow meerkats on the accepted list. My point is that the amount of effort, zoological knowledge and research and resources required to enforce a prohibited list is just greater than that which would be required to enforce a positive list. So I think it's extremely illogical to go that route. And with a positive list, you can place the onus or burden of proof on those who want to display these animals or use them. Some of the rhetorical questions I've asked, even I can't answer, and I spent a lifetime studying and learning about wildlife. But we do have such lists in other jurisdictions that we can draw upon, examine, consider. The work has already been done. And anyway, that's enough. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. MacKay. Questions? If not, Thank you for your presentation.